We rolling.
All right. Peace, old family and new family. You're listening to BoomBappED, capital ED. This is your co-host with the most, Brandon White, a.k.a. Bushido Garvey.
Yeah. One more time. What's happening, y'all? This is Atlas coming at you.
It's your boy Behind the Tech.
Who?
Behind the Tech.
Who?
Behind the Tech, Rablo.
Yes.
Facing the camera.
Yes,
get a load right
camera.
here.
You see how he's still trying to stay low with his
No.
Stop it. But yes, y'all. So today's show, we're gonna actually do an internal cipher of sorts. You know, we decided that after 25, 26 episodes, that you know, it might be good to just kind of vibe out and reflect and talk a bit about the growth and just have our own internal cipher about, you know, our show and our format.
Yeah, long overdue,
yes,
as far as I'm concerned. So it'll be good for us to talk about the show, our motivations, and you know where we at.
Indeed, word up. Actually, you know what? That kind of takes me back to our preliminary conversations about it. First of all, shout outs to Wayo 104.3 for being so open for everybody to have a platform and format at 104.3 Wayo FM, to have their own voice and just really be hands off in terms of how we go about it, with the exception of obviously some FCC regulations and whatnot. So
yeah. I mean, it's pretty remarkable what has happened with radio and with Wayo specifically. Like a few years ago, the scene was totally different, man. So now we got people, you know, like ourselves, able to just get on here and put out and talk about things that are important from the perspective of just regular folk. You know what I'm saying?
Word up. I feel like growing up, my mother used to, you know, growing up, what's the station we all used to listen to? WDKX,
yeah.
Right? DKX is a major pillar in our community. Growing up, my mother not being from here, being from New York City, she was like, Brandon, you're not used to being in a circumstance where there's more than one black radio station. And I didn't really understand what that meant until like this renaissance that's been kind of going on, where there's been like more radio stations having more power, not only because they're actual frequencies or whatever they're called. I should know that off the top of my head, but I don't. Whatever the frequencies are getting stronger, but also like the fact that putting your stuff online makes it more, you know, proliferated. You know what I'm saying? So it allows for this diversity and inclusion of a very culturally rich space known as Rochester, New York. You know what I'm saying? And DKX is always going to be that pillar. You know what I'm saying? It's incredibly important, but so is the inclusion of other community voices. And I feel like, you know, Wayo is a spot like that. WXIR is like that, and maybe a couple other things off the top of my head I can't recall, but I'm just glad we're in the space.
And just to note that WDKX is probably the only black-owned radio station in New York State.
Yes,
I believe so.
Yes, yep. Nothing will take that away from. Nothing can take away from DKX and its power and its potency and its importance for our community. I am glad that there are these spaces though, where we can come in, because we couldn't, you know, roll up to DK and be like, yo, we want to have this show, the intersection of like, you know, true school hip hop and education.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's take it back to the beginning.
Word.
Back when we were kind of mapping out boom baps. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if our listenership really has. They probably gotten a sense for us just over the course of these 26 episodes. But we came together for the purpose of shining the light on these aspects that are important. And I know for me, aspects that are important to our lives individually, you know, education, hip hop, activism, local culture. And I'll broaden that to talk about just intelligence. So, you know, I'm kind of stuck on that lately, just because critical thinking and intelligence to me are the characteristics that make or break movements and even individual lives increasingly. And so when you look at Black American culture, and I recognize that it's not monolithic, you know what I'm saying? But if you look at if looking at youth culture in America, right? I know for me, I'm interested in keeping in people's consciousness and awareness of appreciation for critical thinking. And when I think about hip hop, you know, I've always looked at music as a tool in some ways, you know what I'm saying? Hip hop is a beautiful delivery system for that sort of message. So that's part of what motivated me to get with you, Brandon, get with you, Rob, to bring this to the people, because I feel like that's what we represent. That's part of what we represent.
What do you think contributes to this whole idea of critical thinking kind of not being as critical in our society in general and in hip hop culture? Do you feel like it's less critical thinking in hip hop as a whole? Because, yeah, go ahead.
Do I feel like critical thinking is diminished in hip hop?
Yeah, and as a society.
Yes, both. I think that so relative to society at large, is critical thinking more diminished in hip hop? Not in some circles.
Right,
especially
exactly.
Not in,
that's what I was thinking.
You know what I'm saying? Some of the stuff that I dig, and that goes for reality rap and street rap, and there's the more overtly heady stuff too. But intelligence in and of itself, has always been fly, like cleverness, connecting dots. You know what I'm saying? Dropping knowledge on people. You know what I mean? That's some of the best parts of hip hop, and that's covered through a spectrum of different styles. It's just a matter of whether the artist is going to put that part of themselves out there or not. And I think largely artists are encouraged not to. Maybe to a certain extent, but not to the point where it's going to really foster change. Inspire people to also put that aspect of themselves out there. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's discouraged. I feel like hip hop by and large has kind of gotten co-opted as it's gotten big, and I don't think like that aspect of it, which was so important in the true school era of stuff that I really dig, with your KRS-Ones and all that entertainment type of deal, I think that's diminished.
I would say I will beg the differ for that, because I feel like there's some people that's
You're not used to being behind the mic.
yeah, I'm not, you know what I mean. I feel like there's some people that's actually okay. So to me, intelligence, it sounds like, will be an apparatus, and critical thinker will be the action, right? So in terms of, all right, so a lot of these rappers do have intelligence, even some of the ones that might be considered as mumble rap, right? You know what I mean? I actually remember listening to so I do listen to a lot of music, whether it's underground, overground, you know what I mean, pop, whatever, you know what I mean. But but like, for example, so there was a CD dropped by Lil Uzi Vert and Gucci Mane, right? Now I remember hearing Lil Uzi Vert saying pescatarian in one of the bars. So I'm like, yo, where you get these bars from? You know what I mean? Like, nah, yes, he's weird and everything like that, but if you were to talk to some of the people in Philly, some of the other established artists, older artists, etc., they would tell you that, yeah, this guy's weird, but you know what I mean, he has some other aspects of him that might be acceptable.
So you think so he's sending somebody to go and grab the dictionary with that, basically?
Kind of. You know what I mean? With the ratchetness all around it.
Yeah, I think that with stuff like that, because to your point, Lil Uzi Vert can have this vocabulary and still have this wordplay that goes on the same way I've heard Migos, the same way I've heard definitely Migos. Like we what was that line we was talking about? Oh yeah, in the kitchen, wrist twisted like a stir fly. Something listen, tunnel vision in my third eye. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they have bars like that are really interwoven consistently, not on some once every 5 songs. They just repurpose different quote unquote intelligent vocabulary or references for their raps about the trap and, you know, who they shoot or who they're having sex with, whatever, right? Those more fleshly kind of topics, right? You know, and you so to me it's like this idea of, I don't know if it's a critical thinking piece. Well, one, I just think like the co-opting, as you said, right? The co-opting has just always changed. The way that's been co-opted is just changed. But there's always been this realness, this true, anything that's real, there's a commercial commodification of it that hovers above it, that the majority middle America gets exposed to. But the core of what it is still stays the same. As crazy as some hip hop stuff is to this point, you know what I'm saying? Like some of the more ineffective trap rappers or the ineffective lean rappers, there's some effective ones in terms of them being creative, but the ones that aren't, like there's still like this core of rap or hip hop culture that just continues to push through. And if you are exposed to it, great. If you're not, that's just that matrix of hip hop music in the industry is always going to be there, but it'll just change its software. Basically.
I think the ratio is different though. The ratio of real to commercial fluff / BS has changed over the years because hip hop has gotten bigger. So hip hop has therefore attracted more moneyed interests, more establishment, more people who don't care at all about the culture and are strictly viewing it as a business, as a commodity now. I think that's changed over time. You don't think so?
No, it did. It definitely did. It's the most influential culture in the world. You go turn on the TV and look at every interview. At every commercial, and you will hear a hip hop beat behind that commercial. You'll see people dancing. You know what I mean, etc. And I will say, I actually like the fact that you put it in those terms. It changed in ratio in terms of realness versus the other stuff, right? So, like for example, I always think about KRS-One, right? He was all over the place. Who was some of the first rappers that actually talk about guns in their rhymes, right? KRS-One, Cool G Rap, and all these guys, right? But they did it but the ratio was different, like with the knowledge, quote unquote, versus the nonsense. You know what I mean?
I would argue there's a swing back though. I feel like in the mid to late to early 2000s. You couldn't hear somebody that was like Kendrick Lamar bass on the radio. You couldn't hear a J. Cole on the radio. Somebody like Joey Badass would not have gotten any kind of commercial success. Joey Badass also Young Thug. You know what I'm saying? So none of that was like Talib, Mos, Mortal Technique, whoever, you know what I'm saying, that was underground or commercial. Because you can be underground, just be underground and conscious, because you can be underground too and not be conscious. That was another thing too. When you listen to Dilla's music, Dilla was not a conscious MC at all. You know what I'm saying? He was just as grimy and street with it as the Locks was,
Dilla
or whoever
was conscious,
else.
Baby.
Dilla was not conscious in the same. Dilla was not the Detroit Chuck D, homie. No way. Dilla was talking about paper. Dilla was talking about smoking. Dilla was talking about the ladies. You know what I'm saying? Like,
where was he from? He was from Detroit.
He was from Detroit, of course. That's what I'm saying though. Like, he was mad. That was his. Those were his because sometimes I feel like we always associate commercial with superficial stuff and underground with conscious stuff, right? And that's not always the case. There's a lot of, in this case, commercial is Kendrick and Cole, but they can be conscious and have underground sentiments or whatever. Dilla, Sean Price, whoever else from Duck Down, they're underground, but they're also not quote unquote conscious in that level. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, I feel like in this economy, in this commercial era of hip hop, you're able to be you have more freedom to be who you are and still stack your paper. Like, again, Kendrick would have had to been on Ruckus. He would have had to been on Duck Down. He would have been on Definitive Jux. You know what I'm saying?
Priority
in order
and
to,
all that good stuff.
yeah, exactly. He would have been on all up in the underground in order to have an audience, but now he doesn't. You know what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. Yep.
Yeah.
I see exactly what you're saying.
But
It would be more on the underground level, probably selling 500,000 units.
not even. I mean,
less
it
than
would
that.
probably take him like years, because I think it took a few years for Black on Both Sides to go gold. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it was like 1 year and Mos Def went gold. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
that's a classic. You know what I'm saying? Like, but what role do y'all think when we look at like what hip hop is like now, education and otherwise? This whole demonstration of knowledge and education and thinking, how is that collectively changed and experienced? You think, well, to your point, I guess you're saying it's not really reflected too often, at least on the commercial side of things.
Knowledge, education, and thinking. Yeah. Yes. In short, that's my position. that it isn't. It's de-emphasized, and that hip hop is so big now that if there were a concerted effort by its practitioners to harness hip hop's image. I'm just talking about basically a movement. Like, I would love to see people throwing their weight around, those who have weight in the game, to take advantage of hip hop now that it's as big as it is, now that it's a world beater. You know what I'm saying? To harness it, because we're socially, still right there in the cauldron. You know what I'm saying? We got some real problems, and it's the hip hop generation. We're of an age now. You know what I'm saying? I'm 42. You know what I'm saying? You brothers are in your 30s, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's on us right now to be making our mark, right? And I just feel like we have a choice to just roll with status quo, or or change the trajectory of things. And I see that as a possibility that is not being taken advantage of the way I would like it to. Because I've always seen hip hop as a revolutionary force, as having aspects of it, you know what I'm saying, as being as guerrilla music. You know what I'm saying? I've seen it in that capacity, you know what I'm saying? And so that's what I look for, man.
Yeah, I mean, with that being said, I will say it did lose a lot of its rebel mindset. Let me say that.
Yeah. Because even back to that whole Kendrick Cole argument, that's still two. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because there's two more than what it would have been in '98 doesn't mean that it's a lot compared to like this palette that you had, and what I always felt like when people call it the golden era, I always feel like that's a little biased, but I get why. You know what I'm saying? Because there was this even spectrum of, it was just like this good blend. It wasn't like, it was very righteous, but not too righteous to the point where we're fronting about our more our reality or flesh tendencies. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you can have like the spectrum would be like, and you need music that's ideal, represents ideas more than reality, because that allows you to push for a better reality, like a Public Enemy did, like a KRS-One did, like an X-Clan did, like even a Big Daddy Kane to a certain extent. Right?
I don't know if that was more about ideas. I think that acknowledged reality, but there is an even balance with ideas about what could be. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, so I guess what I meant by that in terms of like the ideas is that, you know what I'm saying, they weren't talking about them doing the like being caught up in negative things. You know what I'm saying? Like, one thing I appreciate, I keep on talking about these dudes, but like Cole and Ketch, like they're a mix of like what what reality could be and what it is. Like, they'll talk about like empowering this and power to this and power to that, but then they'll acknowledge they own trappings in the flesh and their own errors. You know what I'm saying? Public Enemy didn't really do that. KRS-One didn't really do that. But then you didn't have to, because again, that their music was for that push. That's what Cool G Rap was for. That's what 2 Live Crew was for. That's what, and then in between that was like a Tribe, right? And De La. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there was a more healthy spectrum of representing reality and pushing for the best self, right?
Yeah.
But that's not around anymore.
Like, my vision is not for hip hop to become unrelatable because it's on some old, you know what I'm saying, making you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, right, indeed.
You know,
right.
Have you like doing a self-assessment and like not measuring up type of a deal. You know what I'm saying? I think the most potent stuff is, reality rap, man. That's what I love. Yeah. So it's got to reflect reality. You know what I'm saying? But to me, though, the direction that it leaves the listener leaning in is important. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the night, you know what I'm saying?
And back to the education piece, I think that was one piece about hip hop that I appreciated coming up in it, because I was fortunate to come up in an era where it wasn't common to be exposed to the culture, the organic culture. But I got exposed to the organic culture. Since I was exposed to the organic culture, I got exposed to even cross-section of things, which I was able to pull from, critically think about, and allow it to kind of inspire what I want to be about, what I want to know about, and inspire, how I want to be, right? And that's education. The process of inspiration for you to think about your existence, form your existence to contribute to other people's existences. That's education. So when we think about that process that's happened with us, and then we think about our institutions that are supposed to be doing the same thing, and we think about how separated it was, or how connected it was, or how unconnected it was, like, what is ideal? Are we expecting our public, when we send our kids, when you send your kid, I don't got any kids yet, but when we teach our kids and when you send your kid to school, are we expecting them to do what their culture is supposed to be doing all the time? Or are we expecting them to incorporate it somewhat? Or what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that as a father? You know what I'm saying?
I want to make sure that I have the question right, man.
Yeah.
So when I send my son to school, what is it?
How much do you expect the schooling system to embrace your son's cultural heritage or methods of taking in information? Which, you know, we just mirrored and talked about how we did that through hip hop. Yeah. I would imagine as your son, who's, has a hip hop parent, right? And has, other cultural norms, ethnic norms going on, that these are things that shape how he takes in information. How much should the school be engaging in that?
The school should be engaging in that to a very deep and heavy degree. Yeah. I don't have expectations of that happening. So I don't see it happening. So I don't fool myself that it's happening to the extent that I want it to. And so it's important for me, after he comes home from school and in the times outside of school, to orient him to continue the work that is started in school. So especially from a cultural standpoint, we only have a couple minutes left in this interview, so you opened up kind of a can of worms right there. But ideally, the school should be a reflection of the culture of the population that makes up the school. School should represent the population that it is serving. And in the public school system. That's rarely the case. And in Rochester and in the Rochester region, it's not where it needs to be, man. I feel like that's a whole other conversation we have to get into, man.
Indeed.
But my role as a parent though is to be hip to that, to be aware of that, to insert myself into his school situation, to make sure that his teachers, the core teachers that are working with my son, understand what my expectations are in terms of how they're going to be interfacing with him, what he's going to learn. I mean, I and my wife have to be on top of that. That's our responsibility.
I was gonna say something, but we don't have a lot of time. I know, man. But in terms of the ratio, I would just like to say, like, okay, I don't have any kids or anything like that, but looking at myself in my youth or whatever, I remember shunning the negative part of hip hop, like the gangsters, right? The guys that would be on the corner and stuff like that. I remember doing that, but they actually helped me to grow as a person as well. You know what I mean? So, like, I just would like to say that you can find education within the negativity of hip hop as well. You know what
That's
I mean?
a fact. That's a whole fact.
Killer Camp season.
Yeah. I remember I was listening to that the brother who wrote for white folks and teaching the hood and the rest of y'all too. He wrote a great book about what he calls reality pedagogy. His name is Christopher Emden, and he talked about hip hop being a great tool to critically think about our society, to improve it, and to critically think about issues in our society that get reflected in hip hop in terms of like the malpractice. For example, like some of the misogyny that goes on in hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Like being able to look at that as a critical thinking tool and text to be like, does this sit well with you? Why doesn't it? Let's, connect this to this text. That more or so. That's it. I'm saying it right. More so or less. My bad. Yeah. More so or less. Speak on the issue and the problematic thinking that's in that song, right? And so when you listen to that song, you engage in that song, then are you going to be a subservient listener, a passive listener, or when you hear it, are you going to be a person that doesn't internalize it and thinks about it and acknowledges it for what it is and continue to take out the pieces that you are connecting with and you are resonating with, right? So to your point, you know what I'm saying? Because that is hip hop, actually. Hip hop came from the streets. You know what I'm saying? The streets was wild in 70-something, the same way they was wild in 80-something, 90-something. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they took, some of the negative elements, flipped some of the negative elements, and the positive elements that were positive elements, they extract them and created this art form that was supposed to be for advancing and expression, and then it got co-opted again. Then it got not co-opted again. It got co-opted, and then there has to be this adaptation that we got to do again.
And I mean, it is an awesome outside force coming in and like
facts.
Distorting hip hop. That happened from within, man.
True.
We're complicit.
Yeah.
And so being aware of the role that we play in the direction our culture goes in is essential. You know what I'm saying? Yo, for what it's worth, man, because I think we're basically at time, I just want to say that this Boom Bap series that we've put together has been real important to me, you know what I'm saying? And it's been real building with you brothers, you know what I'm saying? Figuring this out as we go, I've appreciated that, so I just want to say that.
Word, man. We definitely have been building, as they say at my job, been building the plane while flying it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So we definitely and we've done so well, So onward, as Atlas says, onward and forward.
True.
As we move, for sure.
Yeah.
So, man, likewise to y'all both, man. Thank you so much for holding it down with your boy.
Yes,
you know
what I'm saying? Big props. We don't give it up. We're always on camera, talking and appreciating each other. But big props to Rablo, you know what I'm saying?
Silent partner.
Exactly, you know what I'm saying? The silent ninja and whatnot. Word. For those who don't, who are just tuning in, you're listening to BoomBappED. Catch us every Tuesday from 1:30 to 2 on 104.3 Way Out FM. Catch us online as well. Check us out on Facebook. We signing out. Peace and progress. You just listen to the internal cypher.
Yeah.
Shit.
Peace, y'all.
Shit.